What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Cool Colas here, and you are now tuning into a new episode of the Pro-Black Blerd Kingdom Podcast. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about something that I just recently saw last week. As a matter of fact, I think it came out April the 29th. But I wanted to talk to you all today about the cancellation of a few CW shows, CW Arrowverse TV shows, and other shows that actually got canceled recently. Specifically, what I'm talking about is Batwoman, DC Legends of Tommorow, and Raising Dion. But I want to put a little bit more emphasis on Batwoman than the others. Usually when I do these podcast episodes, I'll just let you all know right now. I plan it out. I think about everything that I'm going to say before I say it, and I just follow suit of whatever the script is that I created. But today I'm going to go a little bit off the cuff because my thoughts are kind of all over the place with this one. I really want to just give you all my quick thoughts on what I think about the cancellation and the news that I heard about the shows Batwoman, DC Legends of Tommorow, and Raising Dion not coming back. So, to start with Raising Dion, I thought that Raising Dion was a pretty good show, but when you look at season 2, it was very obvious that the storylines just weren't as strong in some cases. Some of the things that they were trying to do were kind of corny. I think I may have even said this in a post before, but I thought it was kind of corny how they had Tevin, which was like this dude who could put up these magnetic walls, like these electrical, I guess like almost reflection like walls up, and they related that to the fact that black men for some reason are not good at expressing their emotions, so his powers were in the fact that he was putting up walls. I thought that was really corny. I just had to say that. But anyway, so season 1 I actually really liked. I thought that they had good actors. I thought that they were setting a tone that was different than what we've seen previously with a lot of other superhero shows, and I thought that it brought something very different to the table. Like a lot of other shows I've seen, though, I did notice quite a few tropes that were problematic. One of them being the agenda of removing what would have been a brown or darker skinned black female as one of the main characters and replacing that character with someone who was light-skinned or looked as if they may have been a mixed black woman. So that was kind of problematic just because of the optics. I still think that the sister who played Nicole was absolutely beautiful, so don't get me wrong, that is a beautiful sister. I think her name was Alicia Wainwright, if I'm not mistaken, but I thought that she did a good job with the role, so that's no slight on her. It's just the optics of knowing that it could have been a brown-skinned black woman who could have played in that role, and instead they got her to play that role, which could have just shown a different picture. The idea of there being another absent black man and all that, I wasn't really feeling that either. But again, that's the story, that's the way that it was written. So it's not even a thing of, we as producers are just showcasing this, but the comic was actually written that way as well too. So I understand all that. But regardless, season 1 was pretty good to me, and I didn't really have many problems with the writing outside of that, and I thought it was very interesting and entertaining. Season 2 I thought was kind of mediocre, but here's the thing that I want to say about Raising Dion. I actually could have gone for another season, and here's why. Every show has an off season, or a couple off seasons even. There's where, some do better than others and whatnot, and a lot of shows, especially comic shows, exemplify that depending on how it's written, who's the villain, and what they were trying to go for. So I would have been willing to give Raising Dion another shot and see another season to kind of get an idea of how they were planning to go forward with all the characters, although they left a few things as a cliffhanger, such as the whole Pat thing. Like, we don't know really what was going on with that. So the point that I'm trying to make, though, is that I think the story could have continued and they decided to cancel it. That's disappointing to me because Raising Dion was a black show. It was a black comic show, and there's not very many of them. And I think I had an episode where I talked about the different black comic shows and which ones I thought were better than others and my opinions on which one I thought was the best and whatnot. And now here we are losing yet another black comic show. Matter of fact, I don't even know how many are even left at this point, because so many of them have gotten canceled or had gotten dropped, and not very many are getting picked up, and not many black superheroes are being turned into main characters for comic shows. It's just not really a thing. So that's very disappointing, just to see that we had a comic show that was in its own lane, doing its own thing outside of DC and Marvel, and now it's gone for whatever reason. Now let's talk about DC Legends of Tomorrow. That show to me had a lot of really highs and a few lows, and there were some moments of stagnation, I guess. Now, the one thing I want to say about DC Legends of Tomorrow is I really did like the show. Overall, I thought that it was great, and I had no problem with, for the most part, the way that a lot of it went. Now, let's be real. Seasons 2, 3, and 7, I felt were the best seasons of the show. Hands down. But DC was one of those shows where I wasn't sure if I was going to watch it again after season 1, because season 1 was so freaking terrible. Season 1 of DC Legends of Tomorrow like kind of set the tone, and I feel like a lot of people didn't really rock with it the way that they probably would have if it would have been better, because of the fact that it was not really good. Season 1 was in my opinion, it was one of the worst seasons in the Arrowverse, outside of like season 4 of Arrow and season 3 of Flash and a couple more seasons of some of these shows I'm talking about that just didn't really go too well. Anyway, point I'm trying to make is DC Legends of Tomorrow was overall a pretty good show. And it had a lengthy run because it went all the way to 7 seasons. And I'm going to be totally honest with you, although I do wish that we would have seen another season, I'm a little irritated with the writers because they wrote it as if we were going to get another season afterwards. But they kind of trolled us throughout most of season 7 by teasing that this may be the end. I mean, even the villain would have been a good ending for the series, because the villain was Evil Gideon, and Gideon was the name of the chick who was like their ship basically and would interact with the Legends throughout the series. So they had an evil version of her, and I thought that would have been a good way to end the series off, but instead what they did was they left it off on another cliffhanger. So this was very apparent when you look at the fact that they let Nate go as a cast member, and Nate has been in the series since season 2. So it was clear that if they made it so dramatic as to have him go out with a bang, lose his powers, and say that he's going to go and live in the totem with Zari, that they weren't ending things for the other characters. Although, again, in the very beginning of season 7, they were kind of setting it up where they were kind of making it seem like this may have been the last season of Legends. Now, mind you, it ended up coming to be that way, but it was because of a cancellation, not because the actual series was planning to end and they were wrapping up the story. To me, I feel like, I'm going to be honest with you, they could have wrapped up DC Legends of Tomorrow in season 7, but they just chose not to. So, as much as I'm mad about that, I do kind of wish that they would have just wrapped it up in 7 instead of having us anticipate whether or not it's going to get an 8. And they kind of did it at a weird moment too, because we got Booster Gold as a character, and I think that would have been kind of interesting to see how they developed him, because for those of y'all who probably didn't watch this, Booster Gold was actually played by a black person in DC Legends of Tomorrow for season 7. He was actually at the tail end. Matter of fact, I think he may have been introduced in the last episode of season 7 for DC. And so the end scene basically was where Sarah, Ava, and all the other people who were on the ship were about to get arrested, and Booster Gold was responsible for why they all were getting arrested, but he was also going down as well too. And so we never really got to see what that cliffhanger really was about, and that was disappointing to see, because I always want to kind of see how like a story ends, so that at least I can have some good closure. And DC Legends of Tomorrow, unfortunately, is not going to get that. Again, my synopsis here is that it had a lengthy run. I wish that it would have ended in a way where we got to see where everybody went and how it all wrapped up, but I really think they could have closed it out at 7. Now, let's talk about Batwoman, y'all. The Batwoman cancellation pissed me off the most out of all the cancellations I just spoke about. And let me tell you why. Batwoman, from my perspective, for me watching every episode from season 1 all the way through season 3, had the most dramatic turn out of all of the shows that I've seen, maybe outside of DC. DC season 1 was pretty bad, and then season 2 was pretty good. So that's the only other one I think that's comparable, but it had such a dramatic turn, and I was just thoroughly impressed. Mind you, they had a lot more odds stacked against them too, because even going in, y'all know me very well, and by this time you should know that I am not into pandering, and I'm not into agendas. I make it very, very clear. I don't like agendas. I don't like tropes. I don't like pandering. I don't like a lot of bullshit when I watch my TV shows, and there's a lot of that in TV shows today. But Batwoman was setting the tone as if they were going to do all of that. And in a way, they kind of did do all of that, because think about it. When Batwoman season 2 was about to come out, it was at a controversial time where Ruby Rose, who played Kate Kane in season 1, who was really Batwoman to begin with, left, and they replaced the actress with Javicia Leslie, who end up being the next Batwoman. And the idea was that she was going to be the main lead because they wanted to promote quote unquote woman of color, so a black woman who was also LGBT. When I heard this news, it was around the time when the George Floyd thing was happening, and I guess the writers with the Arrowverse felt some need to show quote-unquote solidarity, and they just threw Javicia Leslie as Ryan Wilder in there. And when I heard about that, I was just not sold. I was like, this is going to be a bunch of bullshit, because all they really had to do was get an actress who could replace Ruby Rose as Kate Kane. And then I later heard they are going to have somebody replace Ruby Rose as Kate Kane, and she's going to be in this season. And I'm like, well, what the fuck? Then that means that y'all were totally pandering them, because that means that you only added Javicia Leslie in there as a character because of the fact that she was a black woman, and you wanted to show some form of solidarity in diversity, and you threw her in there as the main lead. Mind you, Ryan Wilder, I don't really think was the real Batwoman for real in the comics at the first set of comics that where they had Batwoman. And so anyway, I go on with this mindset. I'm watching season 2, and the first couple episodes were real pandery, and I was like, okay, they're kind of doing the most. But then after maybe episode 3, it got pretty good. I ain't gonna lie to you. I thought that season 2 of Batwoman was actually pretty good. And I'm going to explain why I actually like the season. Number 1, the pandering kind of stopped after a while. Number 2, I thought that she was a good Batwoman and a more likable Batwoman with more personality and more oomph. And let's be honest, y'all. Let's be totally honest. Javicia Leslie is so fine. So she is really, really nice to look at when you're watching Batwoman. So that was another thing that kind of kept me watching. I was like, dang, like if I get to see her every time Batwoman comes on, I mean, yeah, I guess I would keep watching, you know. But seriously though, like, no, I thought that she did a good job as Batwoman though. Besides her looks, I thought she did a great job as Batwoman. I also like the cast of characters that they were building, because they had Sophie, who was another very fine black woman as well too, if I'm being honest. They had Alice, who was basically the star of Batwoman, if we're being honest. She was stealing the show, and the main reason why people actually did watch it, if we're talking about storylines and interesting characters. You had Luke, and he was Bat Batwing, or at least at this point teasing that he might end up becoming Batwing. And you actually had some interesting villains too, because I actually liked Sophia. I was like, this is a little bit different. This was a lot better than the way that they did Hush and all this other stuff in season 1. Because for me, I felt like the Hush thing was a letdown, but I felt like in season 2 when they did Sophia, I was like, okay, this is something a little different. I kind of like this. I kind of like this whole idea of she's now antagonizing Alice, and Alice is at a tweener stage, and she has this little love thing going on where she loves Alice, and she's kind of acting kind of weird because of like Alice's relationship with Ocean and all this other stuff. I was like, this is a good storyline, actually. This is really cool. So I was feeling that, and the Black Mask thing was even cool too. That, and then the thing with where he had brainwashed Kate, and she was this person called Cersei, and Kate was a beast, and she was beating the hell out of Ryan and Alice. That was cool too. I thought that was really interesting. So again, I felt like season 2 just had a lot of things going for it that made it set a new tone that was not really present from my perspective in season 1. Then you had season 3. Season 3 was even better. Like, I don't even know how they climbed from there. I just thought that this was just going to be a very even ground show, kind of like what I had been seeing from DC after a while. Because I think after season 3, DC in seasons 4 through 6 kind of just plateaued. And I thought that I was going to kind of see that same kind of trend from Batwoman. And I felt like we were going uphill because they had 2 very interesting villains, because they had Poison Ivy and then they had Marcus Jet, which both of these people were great villains. I really, really like Marcus Jet. And I think that it was a good surprise. I like the Black Joker they were going for, and I like how he made his Joker different, and nobody really even talked about it, but I just thought he did a good job. I thought that the Jada Jet storyline was really interesting as well too, and added a whole new layer, and it felt like the show, as time was going on without them discussing it, was getting more black. That's the other thing I really liked about it. Like, I thought that it was interesting how she had this mother who was rich and famous and act like she didn't want her for whatever reason, and that reason had to do with Marcus Jet, who really ends up being like the Joker of this series to a certain extent, and then having this Batwoman Joker dynamic. I really was impressed actually by that. And I even liked Jada's little proposed fling or whatever she had going on with Diggle, because I feel like they had a lot of chemistry. So I'm like, okay, I want to know a little bit more about that story. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make, though, is that they had all these very interesting storylines in season 3, between the Black Joker thing, between the Poison Ivy thing. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, I might have done the Poison Ivy thing a little bit different, because with the whole Poison Mary thing, I kind of rather have seen Mary as Bloody Mary, which was an actual Batwoman character, and she never got to show herself on screen in the Batwoman series. So that was a little bit disappointing, but the way that they did it as it was, I thought was still interesting. And I do like the actress who they got to play Pamela in season 3. So I thought that was really interesting. I actually did like the relationship between Ryan and Sophie. To me, they always had a lot of chemistry. They were always bickering and fighting, and it was clear that there was some type of attraction between these two characters. And I was like, they might as well just go ahead and hit it off, because we know it's about to happen. We just know it's about to happen, because they just had their chemistry on screen was always just so undeniable. Even in season 2, I don't know if anybody was a Batwoman fan, I don't know if y'all remember the scene where Ryan and Sophie were like watching Sophia's island go into flames and shit. But there was a scene where they were sitting on a hill together, and Ryan was, I don't know if it was Ryan was resting her head on Sophie's shoulder, or Sophie was resting her head on Ryan's shoulder, but it was one or the other. And at that moment I was like, I feel like something gonna happen between them. First of all, there was always some tension, and then they had a moment where they kind of got along, and I'm like, they usually ship characters like this. So I just had that feeling that that's where they were going with their characters. Anyway, point I was trying to make is season 3 was awesome. I thought season 3 of Batwoman was really great. So I was very disappointed with the fact that it got canceled, because it was a show that I literally looked forward to every week that it came on. And the part that nobody is talking about is the fairly important cliffhanger that the episode or the season, I guess, season 3 left off on. Like, who was that creature at the end? And there were so many theories. And that's the thing, we'll never know who it was. Because my initial theory when I saw that, I was like, is that supposed to be Scarecrow? But then some people online were like, no, that's not Scarecrow. Some people were like, that might be Man-Bat. Some people thought it was somebody named Mr. Death or something like that. I don't remember the character's name that they said it was. Some people thought that it was going to be Solomon Grundy. Everybody just had different ideas of who this mysterious creature was at the end that was wreaking havoc. And I think that as much as I felt like some stories got wrapped up in a way where someone could be satisfied, I thought that there was still a lot left that we really wanted to see, and we wanted to continue to keep being grown attached to these characters in the same way that we did with Arrow, in the same way that we did with Flash, in the same way that we did with, well, I can't really say DC because they done switched out so many people in DC Legends of Tomorrow, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. They had a cast of characters that they were building that we were warming up to, and they just got rid of all of that by canceling the show. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I was super disappointed. I did kind of ruin my day. I'm gonna be honest with you, because I really liked the show. I did. I really thought it was a great show. Now, as far as the cancellation goes, I want to talk about something that I have been seeing over and over again that just annoys the hell out of me. I'm going to be honest with you. I see Blerds online just trashing this show. And everybody's entitled to their opinion, so I don't have no problem with that. Well, I don't have a problem with people disagree, if people disagree with me on the fact that it was not a good show to them. But here's the thing that I'm noticing. So many people are talking about how terrible of a show it was. But most of the people, when they point out the things that are terrible about the show, it doesn't really make sense. Some people are like, well, the writing was just bad. And I'm like, was the writing really that bad? Or are you going off of season 1? And most people, they don't go back and forth with me about that point when I make it. Or if you're going based off of season 1, then maybe, yeah, you could make the argument that the writing could have been better, because the writing in season 1 to me was mediocre. Now, was it the worst? No. So I don't really think it deserved the hate that it got even then, but it still was kind of mediocre in season 1, so I can understand. But if you look at season 2, the writing was definitely not mediocre. They had interesting villains, interesting storylines. They were building the characters and putting them into their own lanes. So that is the definition of good writing. I just think people were looking at the hype of season 1 and saying, oh, season 2 and season 3 are the same way, but Batwoman really just got progressively better. And some people are like, the costumes are bad, and I'm like, dog, I feel like y'all are just being extra critical. There wasn't nothing wrong with the damn costumes. Ryan Wilder's costume was great. I liked Batwing's costume as well too. Now, mind you, I think that the way that Batwing's costume was made may have made him look a little bit thin, because Cameron Johnson, who played Batwing, or Luke Fox in this case, because he's kind of a smaller guy in my opinion, like if you look at him, he's a smaller guy, he doesn't look bulky in the same way that Batwing probably did in the cartoons, where he was a little bit, or in the cartoon version where he was a little bit more muscular. So the suit just kind of looks thin because he's thin. But the way the suit was designed and how sleek it was, I actually like that personally. I like the Poison Ivy costume. I like what they did with Marcus Jet. And then Black Mask just has a mask, and Alice is dressed in rags like she should have been. So I really don't see what the big whoop was about the costumes, because I've seen some people complain about that, and I'm like, what the fuck was wrong with the costumes? They were just fine. And then the other characters, like I said, they were just plain clothes people. So I think it kind of just was what it was. And to me, I feel like that level of scrutiny will never be given to some of these Marvel movies I see, and I see a lot of flaws in them. And I'm like, y'all are being extra critical of this show. And I've seen some of y'all champion some of the dumbest shit on some of the Marvel movies I've seen. Like, I'll give you an example of a Marvel movie that I've personally seen that people were like, oh, everybody's saying that it was terrible and it wasn't that bad, is Eternals. Y'all, Eternals was not a good movie. Eternals was not a good movie at all, and the writing was terrible. And some of y'all are debating that it was actually a decent movie, and it just baffles the hell out of me. I see more people trash Batwoman than they trash Eternals, and Eternals had pandering, like hella pandering, especially for black people. It was written lazily. The characters were not flushed out or developed. Their storylines didn't all make sense, and I get it. Not every character is supposed to be deep and intense. I get it. But they threw in too many characters for them to not be explaining what each character was somewhat kind of doing. And they made some of the characters even irrelevant. And then they also made it confusing who the villain was, like not who the villain was, but who the villain was really, between Icarus and the deviant, that one like really strong deviant, and if they were aligned and all this other stuff. They just didn't really flush that out well, and people are arguing that this was actually a good movie, and I'm like, but y'all are the same people that would trash Batwoman. And Batwoman was way, like, I get this movie to a TV show, I get it, but Batwoman, like, the storylines were written way better, and there was less pandering, in my opinion, overall. So, here's the thing, and this is something that I want to tell everybody who's listening to me, everybody who likes to tune into my content and likes to hear me speak. What y'all have to stop doing, Blerd family, and of course Cool Click, what y'all have to stop doing is being in the mindset of groupthink. Learn to think for yourself. Watch things, research things, and critically think about things for yourself. I say this shit because y'all love to get online, see your friend bash something, or see your friend say something that's great and be like, yeah, man, that was great. Yeah, it sucked. I hate it. It's a terrible show. And y'all get into all this stuff. About how you feel about something based on the fact that your friend or associate said that it was that thing, instead of instead of arriving to your own conclusion on how you feel about it. If most people watched Batwoman all the way through, they would see that the writing on the show actually was pretty decent. Every show has a few flaws, so I'm not acting like it was a perfect show, but I thought that it was great. Overall, it was a great and enjoyable show. And anybody who really took time to actually see every episode would see that. And again, this is coming from the dude who hates tropes, pandering, and agendas. And with LGBT agendas being one of the big things that shows up. And I'm defending the show. Y'all have got to get into the mindset of thinking for yourselves. And, I want to say this. To some extent, I get the whole like-mindedness type of thing, because I think that there's power in being unified as black people. But I'm going to be honest with y'all. A lot of you all are just group thinking because you all don't know how to think for yourselves, because you're bandwagoning what somebody had already said because of their own opinion about what they think about whatever it is they're critiquing. So a lot of you all are bandwagoning when it comes to Batwoman. I'm just being totally honest, because even the gripes and the criticisms that I hear, I do not even think are fair. I really just don't think they're fair. I think one person said the writing was bad, and everybody started saying the damn writing was bad instead of seeing for their damn self if the shit was actually bad. That is what I totally think, and that's why I think that y'all feel the way you all do. Because what people will do is they'll wait for the show to get canceled, and they'll be like, well, it was about time it got canceled. It was about time. About time for what? Your ass probably didn't even watch it. You just said that shit because somebody else said it, man. Like, start thinking for yourself and stop dick riding. Anyway, sorry, that was my hot take. But point I'm trying to make, though, is that it was a good show. And I have been seeing a lot of people. There were a lot of people who supported it. There were people who went on and they were petitioning to try to bring the show back and all this other stuff, which is cool. That's cool. I didn't know how much weight that would have, but at the same time, I thought it was cool that there were fans who kind of stuck up for the show and said, yeah, it's cool, it's good, and it's interesting, so I want the show to stay around, and I want it to be here for another season, because they did that for Batwoman, they also did that for DC, so I thought that was good to kind of see, the fans try to come to the aid of the show and the actors and actresses, because I thought that they also did a very good job as well too, although most people are like, oh, it was just Alice, Alice. And mind you, Alice was a phenomenal character. I thought that she was the most interesting part of Batwoman character-wise, but she wasn't the only good actress on the show. And so that would be, in my opinion, that's a disservice to the other cast members, because I think that they all did really well in their roles, if I'm being honest with you. I just didn't have a problem with just the way things were done, acting-wise. Now, as far as the other disappointment, Batwoman transformed itself to some extent into a black show, as I recently said, because most of the cast at a certain point was black. Now, obviously, and we're talking about the main heroes here, obviously Mary doesn't count because Mary is Asian, and some of you all are going to be like, well, she's a person of color, blah 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 blah, y'all get into that bullshit. But I'm just talking about just the black characters. Most of the cast were black characters, and I thought that it was turning into a black show kind of organically, because at first I wasn't on board once again, but it kind of started transforming into a black show. And so here we are, we have a show that had a black lead. I'll say that it had a black lead, and now that show is also gone too. So let's take a look at this. We had Cloak and Dagger, guess what? Gone. We had Luke Cage, guess what? Gone. We had Raising Dion, guess what? Gone. We had Batwoman, guess what? Gone. We had Black Lightning, guess what? Gone. So it's like, what black shows in the comic world do we even have anymore? Falcon and the Winter Soldier, there was that too. I heard that was gone actually as well. Somebody said it wasn't, actually, you know what? Maybe that show was getting another season. I take that back. I'd have to look that up again. Maybe that is getting another season. But regardless, look at how little black shows we already had, and we lost basically all of them. That's a problem, y'all. That is a serious problem. We do not have black comic shows for real. We don't really have any, or even at the very least like a Batwoman with a black lead. We don't even have that really for real anymore. And that's problematic. And nobody is talking about the impact that would have as far as seeing more black characters on screen. And see, y'all, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, trying to create an entire brand that is completely based in tons of black characters. And the reason why is because when these things take off from being comic books to being something on the big screen, you have many different black stories that you can go and you can look at and say, you know what, if I don't really gel with this black character, I can look at this other one, because we have so many. We have like 20 or 30 different black comic characters that we can, see on screen and we can choose from. So yeah, that's the type of thing that I wanted to see. And to some extent, we could have been headed in that direction because of the black characters they started to put out. If you look at Marvel and DC and just together, and the characters that they were putting out in TV shows and whatnot. And you could kind of see that there were more black characters that were being shown on TV, like more black TV shows. And now it just seems like all of them are gone. And even if they are around, they don't make it past like 4 seasons. And really, if you think about it, Black Lightning kind of had the best tenure because Black Lightning had 4 seasons. Although that 4th season, we really don't want to speak on, it technically did at least have 4. So that's why I think the whole thing was very problematic. I'm disappointed by the cancellations, and really at this point the only show that I can think of that is a black show, if you count it as a black show, but as I'm speaking, I just gotta say I almost forgot it was one, is Naomi. And I don't really even know if it's going to get renewed for a 2nd season, y'all. I really don't, because Naomi had kind of a slow start, and I remember when I first watched it, I was like, what the fuck is this shit? It's unrelatable. I thought that they were trying to do a magical Negro type of thing with her at first, and I was like, okay, so you got that shit going on. Then you got this black girl who's living in the suburbs, and she's the life of the party when she walks in the room and all this other stuff, and I was like, this shit ain't realistic, because she would be getting talked about and all types of bad shit happening to her if this was like realistic, if we're being honest here. Now some of y'all might hear this and you may be like, well, Nick, you don't really like pandering, so wouldn't that kind of bring that issue about? And I'm like, and my thing is like, well, it's not that. It's just that I wish that she had a more realistic type of situation. Like, it's cool that they gave her the brother that she had as a love interest, but, you know, they already have her teetering, like, in other directions. Like, she don't know who she want to be with, and then her parents aren't black, and she doesn't really have any other black friends for real. And so, you outside of, like, maybe Zimbardo, there's not really black characters that give you that type of feeling in the show where it literally feels like a black show, although the lead, Naomi, who is known in the comics as Powerhouse, is it doesn't give you that feel like that it's a black show. But regardless, it is, because Naomi is a black character. But I don't know if it's going to get renewed, y'all. I really don't. And I'm going to be honest with you. I actually like Naomi as a show right now, but it started off real slow. It started off real slow. Like, the first couple episodes, I was like, look, I feel like this ain't going to make it, because really, outside of, like, them teasing that Zimbardo is the villain, even though he really kind of isn't from what it looks like, the show's kind of falling flat. Now, it's kind of started to find its way, and the story is making sense, but, you know, there's definitely a lot of flaws outside of realism. Like, I'll give you another one. The action, I think, is kind of lacking in the show, and it does feel like a kind of pep talk soap opera, like some of the other shows that I have seen, for example, in the CW. So I don't know if it'll get another season because of, like, some of the trends that I've been seeing with some of these, like, shows that have been getting released, but I hope it does, for the sakes of us having to have some form of culture. And I've talked to you all about this before. We, as black people, we've got to have some form of culture in every department, anything that we can get. Now, we can try to make that culture better, but at the same time, we have to have some form. We recognize that it's not ideal or the most ideal, but we have to have some form in some way. So I guess I say that for a series like Naomi, I do hope that it sticks around, for the sake that we need that piece of culture. Anyway, y'all, that was my rant for today when it comes to these different comic series cancellations and my thoughts on it. I hope that you all enjoyed this show, and feel free to check out other episodes of my podcast. I'm going to have a lot more to come. I have new episodes every Friday, as I always say. And so with that, I'm going to bid y'all adieu and let y'all do you. And I'll definitely be talking to y'all later. All right, y'all. Peace.